Hello, in this problem we will be talking about at regular contest 116, so number B problem, which is products of minimum and maximum. I suggest you to read the problem. If you haven't read the problem, I will first explain it. So you will be given a sequence. So what you have to do is you have to find out all the possible subsets of this sequence, and for all the possible subsets you have to multiply the minimum value of that subset and the maximum value of that subset and add them, right? So if we can see the test case here, the sequence is given 2 4 3. So the possible subsets are 2 4 3 2 4 2 3 4 3 2 4 3. And for each of the subsets we have found out the minimum value and the maximum value, and we have multiplied them, right? For this subset the minimum value is 2 and the maximum value is 3. For this subset the minimum value is 2, the maximum value is 4. So the multiplied result is 8, and finally we have to add all this up, right? So let's go to the solution part. So first what you have to do here, suppose a subset is given to you, like 2 5 4 3. What you have to do here is first sort the subset, right? First sort the sequence. So if you sort the sequence look like this: 2 3 4 5 6. Now what we will do, now what we will do, you have to understand this part very clearly. So whenever you are going whenever you are going to the next element, whenever you are, so you will be iterating through this array, and whenever you will be going to the next element, whenever you are going to the next element, the the options for the previous element will be multiplied by 2. The options for the previous elements will be multiplied by 2, right? If you don't understand this part, I am explaining it, right? So suppose 2, suppose 2 is your minimum value, right? Suppose 2 is minimum, it doesn't gonna change. So if 2 is minimum, what are the possible maximum values? The possible maximum values can be 3, 4, 5, 6, and 5 and 6, right? These are the possible maximum values if 2 is the minimum value, right? So whenever we are considering 3, whenever we are considering 3, so the minimum value becomes 2 and the maximum value becomes 3, right? So whenever we are considering the maximum value as 3, what are the possible subsets, that can happen here, right? So there is no element between 2 and 3, right? So we cannot insert any element in the subset, right? We cannot insert 4, because if we insert 4, 3 will not remain the maximum element. So we cannot insert 5 6 also. We cannot insert if there were any value previously to like 1. We also cannot insert 1 here, because then 2 will not remain the minimum value, right? So if 2 is the maximum minimum value and 3 is the maximum value, the number of options, there are only one possible subset, which is 2 and 3, and there is only one options, right? But if 2 is the minimum value and the maximum value is 4, 2 is the minimum value and maximum value is 4, then what are the possible subsets here? So the possible subsets are, if 4 is the maximum value, then we can insert 3, right? We can insert 3 or we won't insert 3. So there are two possibilities, right? We can either include 3 or exclude 3. So there are two possible subsets here, right? The possible subsets are 2 4 and 2 3 4, right? So these are the possible subsets. When we are when we are considering 5 as the maximum value, when we are considering 5 as the maximum value, so what are the number of possible subsets now? So we have got 2 as the minimum and 5 as the maximum. So we can either include 3 or exclude 3. We can either include 4 or exclude 4. So for 3 we have two options, for 4 we have two options. So the total number of options are 4. So 2 being the minimum and 5 being the maximum, we can only create 4 possible subsets, right? So this part is the most important part in this problem. Okay, so one thing you have to understand, each time we are going to the next element, each time we are going to the next element, the possible subsets, when the minimum is 2 is multiplied by 2, right? When we will go to 6, what are the possible subsets here? 3 either can be excluded or can be included, 4 either can be excluded or can be included, 5 either can be excluded or can be included, right? So the possible subsets is 8, right? So 2 being the minimum and 6 being the maximum, the possible subsets are 8. So each time we are moving forward, the number of possible subsets for 2 will be increased by 2, right? So same goes for 3. Like if 3 is the minimum value, then we cannot have 3 as the maximum value. So the maximum values are 4, 5, and 6, right? So if 3 is the minimum value, so if 3 is the minimum value, if 3 is the minimum value and 4 is the maximum value, we cannot insert any element because there is no element between 3 and 4. So the only options is only one. If 5 is the maximum value, 3 being the minimum and 5 being the maximum, so we will get the only element we can insert is 4. So there are only two options whether 4 can be included or can be excluded. So there are two. If 6 being the maximum value, we can either include 2 or exclude 2, we can either include 5 or exclude 5. So there are four options. So each of the time, time we are moving forward, the number of possible subsets is multiplied by 2 for each of the element, for each of this element. So how can we solve this, right? So what we will do here, we will just write the sequence again: 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So what's happening here? So first we will start from I equals to 0. Now what we will do, that first element, we can't do anything, we can do anything here. The first element remains itself. So we will have a 2. Then when we will go to the second element, so when we'll go to the second element, so when we will go to the second element, so what we will write here is 3 multiplied by 2. So what we will get here is, what we will get in the answer is 6. Now what we will do here is, when we are moving forward, we will multiply the previous option by 2, right? We will multiply the previous option by 2. First element we will write as it is. When we will move to the next element, we will multiply the previous thing by 2. So we will get a 2 multiplied by 2 and we will add this. So 3, right? Like this. Okay. So now when we will move to the third element, so the maximum value is now 4, right? So the maximum value is now 4, and for 4 being the maximum value, there are two minimum values, which is 2 and 3, right? Okay. So now now let's see this. For 4 being the maximum value and 2 being the minimum value, there is only two options, right? Whether 3 can be included or excluded, right? So here these two represents the number, and these two represents the option, or you can say these two represents the subset. Here, first three, these three represent the number, and 3 we can write 3 into 1, right? So, so for this 4, so for this 4, what is happening here? If 4 and 2, 4 being the maximum and 2 being the minimum, then the possible subsets are the possible subsets are 2, because either 3 can be included or can be excluded. So there are two possible subsets, and for each of the possible subsets the maximum will be 4 and the minimum will be 2, right? Again, when 4 is the maximum and 3 is the minimum, the possible subset is only 1, and for this possible subset the maximum will be 4 and the minimum will be 3, right? So what's happening here? So if we add these two things, because we have to add those, what we can do here, there is 2 into 4 into 2, and there is what? There is 1 into 4 into 3. So what we will do here, 4 into, if we take 4 common, we will get a 2 into 2 plus 1 into 3, right? So that's what's happening here. We are multiplying the previous option by 2. So we'll get a 2 into 2 plus the current element 3, and whichever this results, we will multiply this thing with the next element, right? So then we will get the sum up to this, right? So this is the so the so this is the case. I will be explaining the next case here, you will understand fully. So what we will do after, what we will do, we will multiply 2 by 2 plus we will add the current element, and then the total result will be multiplied by the next element, right? So after 4, next element, right? So now we will move to the number 5, right? So so recognize this, as we are moving to the next element, as we are moving to the next element, all the possible subsets with minimum 2 will increase by 2, right? If we are moving previously, what are the possible subsets where 2 is the minimum? The possible subsets are 2, right? There are two possible subsets there, when 2 is minimum and 4 is maximum, right? So when 2 so 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 what is happening here, that when 5 is maximum and 2 is minimum, so the number of possible subsets is, whether 3 can be included or excluded, 4 can be included or excluded. So the number of possible subsets are 4, right? So here we can see, previously the number of possible subsets of 2 was 2. So now the number of possible subsets is multiplied by 2, right? So so this thing will be getting this, so this thing will be multiplied by 2. Now, as 5 being the maximum and 3 being the minimum, now 5 being the maximum, 3 being the minimum, what are the possible subsets we can get? We can either include 4 or exclude 4, right? So there are two possible subsets. Now the previous option for 3 was 1, and so only 1. So the new option for 3 is 2. So this thing will be also getting multiplied by 2, right? Now what will happen here is, as 5 being the maximum, 4 can also be the minimum value, right? As 5 being the maximum, 4 can also be the minimum value, right? So what are the possible subsets for 5 being maximum and 4 being minimum? We cannot insert any element, so the possible subsets is only 1, right? So for 5 being the maximum, the possible subsets for 2 is 4, the possible subsets for 3 is 2, the possible subsets for 4 is 1, right? So we have pre-calculated this one, right? So these are the possible options for 2. So now what we have to do, we have to multiply this thing by 2 plus the current element 4, right? So what we are doing here, if we multiply this element by 2 and plus 4, so what we will get here, we will get 2 into 2 into 2 plus 3 into 2 plus 4 into 1, right? So we will get this thing, right? So what this thing is representing, this represents the number 2, the number the number, and this represent the possible subset, right? So we can see, being 2 being the minimum, there are four possible subsets, and each of the possible subsets will get multiplied by 5. 3 being the minimum, there are two possible subsets, and each of the subsets will be getting multiplied by 5. 4 being the minimum, there are one possible subsets, and each will be getting multiplied by 5. So we can see that we will just, if we just uh, multiply this thing by 5, because each of these will get multiplied by 5, we'll get another answer, right? So we'll get another answer. Now we will get another addition, right? So now what we will do, we will move to 6. So as we have moved to 6, now 6 is the minimum. Now the possible subsets for 2 will again be increased by 2. The possible subsets for 3 will again be increased by 2. The possible subsets for 4 will again be increased by 2. and and the and a new element 5 will be added, right? Because 6 being the maximum, 5 can also be the minimum, which were not in the previous value. So what we will do here is, this is our previous option, right? So what we will do, our previous option will be again getting multiplied by 2. So if we multiply this, multiply this, recognize this, we will get a 2 into 2 into 2 into 2 plus 3 into 2 into 2, we will get a plus 4 into 1 into 2, right? So what is happening here, 6 being the maximum and 2 being the minimum, there are only there are 3 either can be included, excluded, 4 either can be included, excluded, 5 can either can be included or excluded. So there are 2 into 2 into 2, there are 8 possible subsets. So if we multiply the previous possible subsets with 2, because a new element is added, because we are getting a new element, so the previous previous possible subsets will be multiplied by 2, right? So that's what's happening here. If we multiply it by 2, so 2 have 8 possible subsets. 3 now have, 3 being the minimum, now have 4 possible subsets. 4 being the minimum, now have 2 possible subsets. And and each of these will get multiplied by 6. So we will we will we will find this, and we will multiply this by 6. So that's how we will get the result. So final thing what you have to do is here, uh, so first element remain itself. Then what we have to do, you have to see the previous option. So 2, you will multiply this previous option into 2, and add this current option 3, and you will multiply this thing with the next element, right? And with the next element, then we will move to the next element. And before moving to the next element, what you will do, this is your previous option. What will do, you will multiply this previous option again by 2, and you will add this 4. And this thing will be multiplied by 5, right? This thing will be multiplied by 5, and you will and you will, add this, and then we will move to 6, and this is your previous option, right? So your previous option will, what is happening is, your previous option will be multiplied by again 2, right? Because each of these things will have a new element, right? So this thing will be again multiplied by 2. So we will get a 2 into 2 plus 3. So we'll get a 2 into 2 plus 3 into 2 plus 4, and this thing again will be multiplied by 2. If you multiply it by 2, so this so if you multiply it by 2, so what's happening is, these two will have again two more options. These three will have again two more options. These four will have again two more options. So that's what you are going to do. So you are going to solve this problem. So the time complexity of this problem is, you have to just iterate through. First, you have to sort the array. So the sorting, we know the order of n log n, and you have to then iterate over the whole array, which is order of n time. And each of the operations, we can say that order of one time for n elements. So we can say that the time complexity of this algorithm is n log n plus n. So this will be executed in time to solve the problem. If you have any queries or any comments, please feel free to do the comments. I will try to answer those. Thank you.